Hello, comrades. Welcome to another
Comrade.
great live stream with your host, Jason Hartman, who will answer all of your questions and solve world hunger and all the world problems that we're now facing. We're in some crazy times right now. And, the word on everyone's lips is inflation, inflation, inflation. How could it not be? It's a real thing. And we are experiencing this. And it's funny because well, it's not funny, but a lot of our ancestors and even grandparents, parents went through very similar periods. So, Jason, tell us about this particular cycle that we are experiencing.
Well, yes, Ashley. And by the way, funny intro with the comrades. I don't think many of our viewers and listeners are interested in being comrades, but I get the
No, they're
joke.
not.
Yeah.
They know what I meant.
Yes. And it's funny because the collective mastermind was first promoted or announced at a Rebel Capitalist event. And, my saying for that was, you started your weekend as Rebel Capitalist, and some of you ended up as collectivist. But don't worry, folks. The collective mastermind is not at all about collectivism. It is about capitalism. And we just thought that was kind of funny. Got that from Ayn Rand because she used to have a group at her apartment in New York City that would meet every week, and some of the people who met in that little group where they would talk about issues and try to solve the world's problems back then. And this is like the 50s and 60s. I don't know exactly when it started and ended, but
I wish we still did that. These intellectual salons where you get together and just talk about things.
Absolutely. A salon, and that's the right word for it, by the way. That is the right word. Or an agora, like in ancient Greece, they had the agoras, right? Where all these brilliant ideas came out of. And one of the things, by the way, tangent alert here, that was credited as ending the Dark Ages was the growth of coffee houses in Europe, because people would get together, share ideas, and solve the world's problems. So
that makes sense.
that's what we do at the collective. We're doing a little bit of that on each of these live streams as well. But just to finish the Ayn Rand story, so she called this group kind of snarkily the collective. And at the collective meetings in Ayn Rand's apartment, and Ayn Rand growing up as a Russian Jew, leaving Russia, coming to the US, coming into New York City, and being absolutely amazed at what she called a marvel of capitalism and a marvel of man's achievement. And by the way, she used the word man. She did not use a politically correct word. She was a woman, obviously, but she was impressed with the achievement of man and how men built New York City. Okay, sorry, I'm gonna piss everybody off now, but that's just the reality of it. When you look out at the world, the vast majority of people doing these dangerous jobs happen to be men. Okay, there are a few women, and hey, women are welcome to do them, but
women have another dangerous job, and a lot of them died doing it. So
childbirth, yes.
Yes.
That's what you mean, right?
Right. Yeah.
I was wondering where you were going with that one. Maybe it's just being married.
Yeah.
That could be a dangerous job too. But anyway, so she was amazed at New York City, and she thought it was just this miracle of capitalism and a miracle achievement of mankind. And so she called this little group the collective, that met in her apartment in New York City. And the members were Nathaniel Branden, who I sat next to and drove home from the world premiere of the Atlas Shrugged movie, the first episode of it. It's a trilogy in Westwood Village, and Nathaniel Branden was her friend, her lover, and he was the author of many books on self-esteem, and he was kind of one of the pioneers of that movement. Now, granted, like many things, sadly, the self-esteem movement has been totally blown out of proportion, and what people seem to forget, and this all started in the sort of, I guess, the 70s, maybe, as I look at history and realize that, is that to have self-esteem, people actually need to frickin' do something. They don't just get it for free. It doesn't just come because you showed up, although, admittedly, as Woody Allen said, 80% of success is just showing up. But what he meant by that is showing up where there's opportunity, showing up at
Mhm.
work every day,
Mhm.
showing up and doing the hard stuff you don't want to
Sure.
do, right? That's showing up,
Yeah.
but not just because are
Right. No,
blessed
you
with
have to
being
earn
born.
it.
But yeah,
Yes.
you have to earn
Otherwise,
it, of course.
what's the point of life if, what's the point of
Yeah.
life?
Yeah, and
What
and there's a sense of pride in earning it,
Sure.
the good sense of pride,
Yes.
right? In a good way.
Mhm.
Although, pride goeth before the fall, so be careful of pride. Like
Mhm.
self-esteem, that gets blown out of proportion too.
Mhm.
But yeah, so she called this group the collective. But the other fascinating member, and we'll move on here in a second, talk about inflation, of the collective of Ayn Rand's little group that met in her apartment was Alan Greenspan,
Mm.
our former and I think, at least in modern era, longest serving Federal Reserve chairman. And Alan Greenspan back then believed in sound money and good things, but he later became a sellout to the Keynesian idea of economics. And John Maynard Keynes, um, arguably one of the most famous economists ever, although I would say that Karl Marx, sadly, and John Maynard Keynes, sadly, even though maybe not as famous, but more influential. He was the most influential economist in human history because literally two-thirds of the world at various times lived under communism and Marxism. And of course, that was an epic disaster. But Alan Greenspan was a good friend of Ayn Rand, and
Mhm.
he became a sellout when he became Federal Reserve Chair, or probably before that. And he became a money printer, a Keynesian, and just started believing in all these idiotic ideas that don't work, but they're good for the temporary time, for the quick fix. Ben Bernanke, Helicopter Ben, the chair after him, of course, he said he would drop money from helicopters if it was needed to fix a recession. And
Mhm.
since then, this is the way they all are. They're all just
Mhm.
money printers, and this must end in disaster. It inevitably will. We're already seeing signs of it with this very scary inflation. And Ashley, I occasionally go to Costco. In fact, I went to Costco with you once,
Mhm.
and you know, uh, going to Costco every few months, it's a big shopping spree. And the usual shopping spree is about $500 for me with food items. Now I know you can buy all kinds of stuff at Costco. You can buy $100,000 diamond ring at Costco if you want, but just for food and all the basics. I couldn't believe the other day how much prices have gone up.
Mhm.
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
that 2 pack of Listerine mouthwash that I always buy because I put it in my water pick, which, by the way, if you don't have a water pick, that's my best tip for you. Okay, forget about all the economics. You must have a water pick. It doesn't have to be that brand, but just a water flosser. We'll put it that way. Very important for dental health. And I put a little Listerine in there with the water, and so I use kind of more of it. And I always buy this 2 pack of Listerine. It's got a handle on it. They put 2 bottles together. That used to be $8.97 or something. Now it's $14.97.
Wow.
15 bucks. It's the same exact product,
Mhm.
but the price has gone up, but you don't get any more. The package didn't get any
Mhm.
better. The product didn't get any better. It's not more effective than it used to be. It just prices are skyrocketing. My last Costco trip was $773. It is, I don't know how, and I'm going to sound like a snooty elitist here. I don't know how normal people can get by. Really, I mean, if you
We're
have a
not. That's
family and
that's
you have a normal income,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, they can't get by. It is staggering how bad this is. Uh, I had the 1 year anniversary of my current car just recently.
Mhm.
When I bought that car, the first time I filled it with gas, it was 35 bucks. Last time I filled it, it was
Mm.
$72. It's the same gas tank. You
Mhm.
go the same distance. You get nothing more from it except you pay now more than double.
Mhm.
Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go. Well, there are
Let's
s
go, Brandon.
well, when you go to the pump nowadays, there are stickers on the pump,
Yeah.
and it's a picture of Brandon pointing to the price, and it says, "I did that." Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, Brandon is our current president. If you don't know that, well, hey, hey, listen, I didn't get that joke right away either, but if you don't
Yeah.
know by now,
Yeah.
everybody's got to get it. Okay, so let's look at a little data here. Here is a chart for you,
Mm.
and this is from Statista, and really the source is Gallup, but they made the chart, and the uneven fallout of the inflation surge. Now, this is a a Gallup poll. They call you on the phone and they ask you questions. I
Mhm.
usually don't take the calls, but enough people do to make a survey, right? And the share of U.S. adults
Mm.
saying that recent price increases have caused financial hardship for them based on their household income. And this, again, I always talk about this. Now, most of the media, well, the vast majority of people don't really understand the way inflation works. They don't understand how to win from inflation, which we'll talk about today because we've got some good listener and viewer questions about that. But so here you have the people making less than $40,000 per year. And by the way, this is not per person, this is household income. Household
Mhm.
income. So if this is a couple, this is the income of the household. 40,000. That ain't much money nowadays. It ain't what it used to be. Okay. So severe hardship is in red. 28% of these people say they are suffering severe financial hardship from these price increases. 42% say moderate financial hardship. So that's 70% completely in that category. And 29% say no hardship, which is amazing to me. I don't know how anybody could say that making less than $40,000 per year as a household.
Mhm.
But heck, this is why one of the Rothschilds, and this is the banking family that's been around for hundreds of years, and it's estimated that the net worth of this family is hundreds of trillions of dollars. That's with a T. Now, I don't know if that's true or how it could exactly be true because the total assets of the entire planet are, that's a lot. Yeah, anyway, whatever. But there's all kinds of conspiracy theories about them, and some of these are just conspiracy facts. They're not theories, okay? But some are theories too. And anyway, this is a very wealthy, very influential banking family that for hundreds of years has influenced the central banking culture that we endure now. And that means the Federal Reserve is our central bank in the US, the ECB in Europe, Japan's central bank. All these countries have central banks. And there's a Rothschild quote from one of the Rothschilds that said, let me control the money or the currency, really, and I care not who makes the laws. And that is why it is so powerful because people do not understand inflation. They do not, it's like the slow boiling of the frog.
Mhm.
They do not understand how it is hurting them.
Mhm.
Yeah, they kind of see, well, prices are higher, but everybody just expects prices to always be higher. It's weird. It's just baked into our psychology because that was
Right.
what we've always experienced.
Mhm.
So they don't get it. But you notice that the folks at the other end of the spectrum, $100,000 or more in household income. Now, 100 isn't even much nowadays, but 71% of those people say no hardship.
Mhm.
So this just shows you, even though these 29% just don't get it, and I don't know why, that inflation disproportionately hurts the lower socioeconomic
Mhm.
classes, and it dramatically benefits the
Of course,
rich.
because they have assets. Yes.
They have assets that are inflation indexed, and they
Mhm.
finance them with debt. And
Mhm.
that debt is long-term cheap fixed rate debt below the rate of real inflation. So they're arbitraging the inflation,
Mhm.
and the inflation is paying the debt off for them. It's truly
Mhm.
a miracle. It really is. Yeah.
Mhm.
So with that,
All
do you want to
right.
get into some of these
Yeah,
questions?
I do want to get into this question. This is from Green Star Midori Boshi. Where have you been all my life, Green Star Midori Boshi?
I remember a long time ago, my mother had me drinking sometimes Midori margaritas.
Yeah.
Ugh, nowadays, I would hate that. It's funny how your tastes change, but
Yeah. I
yeah,
think it's an anime character. I'm not sure. But
yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's but yeah, Midori liqueur. Was it mint? Isn't it
It's
mint?
green. Yes,
Green,
it's
yeah.
a funny looking drink.
It's
Yeah,
It's very retro. When I think of Midori, I think of a retro kind of cocktail. But
yeah, I agree.
yeah. Okay. Well, ask and you shall receive. Green Star Midori Boshi. So this is an audience member from YouTube who comments a lot on your YouTube channel.
Great.
And
Well, thank you
Midori
for the
Boshi
comments, Green
asked,
Star Midori.
yeah. I'd like to hear you talk more about the details of the borrower's benefit from high inflation. So the salary, not referring to entrepreneur salary, is generally fixed. It's improbable you'll get a 7% increase yearly. Maybe in the first years of your career, you get 50% yearly because you switch jobs, et cetera. But afterwards, you kind of reach a plateau. So since you still pay X dollars per month to the bank for 20 years, considering the rate is fixed, it will still be more painful as you pay because the cost of living itself will increase. So in what conditions would you say that taking a loan from a bank for long periods of time is worth it? Or what kinds of things can we buy cash down in order to at least preserve the value of the money?
Okay, so this is interesting, Ashley, because what she, I guess this is she, I don't know. What is being asked here is not directly related only to the inflation-induced debt destruction strategy that I've
Mhm.
been teaching for
Mhm.
many years, but also just that generally everything else in life, how your salary or your income doesn't keep pace with inflation. And that
Mhm.
is true because of many things. Number one, employers will be reluctant as they continue to automate and try to find replacements for the most expensive thing in running a company, which is almost always the staff. It's the human capital is the most expensive component. So they'll automate and try to do without as many humans as possible. But it's interesting also that you look at your whole picture and realize, look, there is more hardship. I have less money left over because inflation is debasing the value of my earnings.
Mhm.
So I'm spending more and more on all these other things,
Right.
food, clothing,
Mhm.
etc. But the debt itself is the arbitrage that you can win, Midori. Okay, you can win that because you're paying the debt back in cheaper dollars. So my answer is 20 years, 30 years, 40 years of debt, whatever, get the longest uh, debt you can at the lowest fixed rate you can and pay it back in ever cheaper dollars. So, one principle is what's called the time value of money or net present value, right? So, you pay it back in cheaper dollars. We would always rather have money today than money tomorrow
Mhm.
because the money tomorrow, we can't use it today. That's one component. But the other component is that the money today is more valuable because it hasn't been debased by inflation yet. So the lender gets the money tomorrow, and you, when you borrow the money, you get it all today. So it's a
Mhm.
beautiful thing. You're basically arbitraging that. And for probably the first time in your lifetime, certainly the first time in Ashley's lifetime or my lifetime, you are borrowing below the cost of not real inflation, which
Mhm.
has been true for probably all of our lifetimes, but you are borrowing below the cost of the stated inflation rate now, which is really interesting because they recently stated that the inflation rate was 6.2%. And you know that if you get a mortgage today, you can borrow it around 3%. And that is, I mean, right there, you're beating them at their own game.
Mhm.
So borrow as much as you can. And this is why you want to get a bunch of rental properties because they're such a debt friendly asset class and you don't even pay your own debt. This is what we call self liquidating debt.
Mhm.
Someone else pays it for you, the tenant pays it for you. And so not only in terms of the equation of that property are you getting to pay the debt back in cheaper dollars, but you're not even paying it at all. The tenant is paying it.
Mhm.
So you get in the middle of this beautiful arbitrage. And remember the word arbitrage, my dummy definition for it that I made up is exploiting the differences in things. That's what arbitrage is to me, right? Exploiting the differences in things. And what the difference you're exploiting is the stated inflation rate and the real inflation rate, which is probably double that, maybe 12 to 15%, and the rate of borrowing. And then you're delegating the responsibility of repayment to renters or tenants. It's an incredible equation.
Mm-hmm.
You won't win in every area of your life.
Mm-hmm.
I can't help it that your salary does not keep pace with maybe even stated inflation, much less real inflation. It doesn't. That sucks. It's a bad deal. But at least you can beat it on your personal residence and your income properties.
Right. Right. And that brings us to the second part of the question on the bottom there. Do you think real estate will be as good as an investment in the future with so few people able to make the rent payment off inflated property values?
Yeah. So that's a faulty premise.
Mm-hmm.
And here's why.
Mm-hmm.
So few people able to make the rent payment off inflated property values. Well, look, rents are way up. Rents in many metro areas are up literally 30%.
Mm-hmm.
30%. Can you imagine paying a third more for rent? Like, it's staggering. Okay. It's absolutely staggering. And of course, we know that real estate values have been going through the roof. This is what happens when you have a limited supply of something and a massive increase in the supply of the currency unit that pays for something, right? So more dollars being created out of thin air, fake money, fiat money. Fiat meaning by authority or by decree, right? It has value because the government says it does, right? Another faulty idea. And they're chasing a limited supply of assets. And so, yes, that is true. But you're assuming, and here's the faulty premise in that assumption. And don't worry, I'm not getting on your case about it because this is what everybody says. You're in good company.
Right.
It's the way everybody thinks it
Mm-hmm.
is. But it's not correct. The faulty premise is that the same person is going to be renting that house over time. So if the rent price goes up and people can't afford the rent, they simply move down and live in a place they can afford, which is a lesser place. Think of it like this. If you live, and hardly anybody goes this direction, but most people go the other direction, right? But if you live in a place like Florida, where I live, now some places in Florida are super expensive and they're not reasonable, but a lot of markets in Florida are quite reasonable. So say you live, for example, in Jacksonville, Florida. That's an inexpensive city, okay? Not too costly for housing there, although it has gone up. Say you live in Jacksonville, Florida, and the way you live now is you have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in a suburban neighborhood with a 2-car garage. And you rent that place for, let's call it $1,800 a month. And you do the crazy move that nobody does, and you move to New York City. Okay. And in New York City, for $1,800 a month, you can't rent anything.
A closet.
Right. You can't even rent a closet, I don't think. Okay. But, I'm not up on the real estate prices in New York City. But say you did move to a place like that, and you would have to pay $3,000 a month to rent a closet.
Mm-hmm.
So your standard of living declines, right? You move to New York City because your salary is going to be higher, but it's nowhere near enough to make up for the increased cost of living. So that's the thing, right? The point is, when you did that move, your standard of living went down. So if you talk to your tenants 5 years from now, if you have a tenant now that is renting that 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage suburban house from you for $1,800 a month, and you raise the rent over the years, and in 5 years the rent on that place is $3,000 a month, it won't be the same tenant, likely. The tenant you used to have today will have moved to another place that they could afford, and there will be inflation, but let's just say there's none, and so it's a simple example. They move to a place that's $1,800 a month, and that place is in an inferior area. It's in a school district that's worse. It's smaller. It's older. It has a carport instead of a garage. It only has 2-bedroom, 1-bath. Right? Their standard of living declined. It's not the same renter. Okay.
Mhm.
It's a different person.
Okay.
And
Mhm.
yes, people will be able to afford to rent houses. It's just what will they get for it? That's the question. So be careful of that faulty premise. Yes, times are getting worse for renters. There's no question about it. But what has to give is the standard of living. They're just
Mhm.
going to live in a worse place.
Mhm.
And that's what'll happen. And that's what's always happened. And a way to know this, I always say, Ashley, and you've heard me say this a million times on the podcast, especially, you must watch old movies, watch old TV shows, listen to old music, and read old books so that you have a sense of history, even, and it doesn't have to be older than your own lifetime. Watch the stuff that was published when you were a teenager. Watch the stuff or listen or read, whatever, the stuff that was published when you were in your 20s, if you're in your 30s or 40s now, right? Just watch older stuff to remind you of how things used to be. And then also watch things and consume things that were published before you were born, right? And if you look around and you see the way people lived that were considered middle class or poor or wealthy back then, compare it to how they live now. Yes, we have more technology. Yes, every
Mhm.
poor person's got a smartphone. I get it. But you can't eat your smartphone. I'm not going to actually eat it. Okay. It's gross. By the way, one of the germiest, most disgusting things is your phone.
Of course.
Yeah, because you're touching other things than touching your phone. So your phone is disgusting. Clean it. And then just for public information, the elevator button, don't touch elevator buttons, and the soap dispenser in a public bathroom. Those are the most germy places ever. So there you go. All right. We've all become germaphobes, right?
All right. All right. I want to do some shout outs. Hello, JBL. How are you? That is true about all empires, he writes. We were talking about
Yes.
Ayn Rand being very impressed with New York City, and then you commented that it was men who built it. That is true about all empires. Yes, it is. There's nothing wrong with that.
And all empires come to an end. And this
Yeah.
one will too. The US
It will.
empire will come to an end someday, but probably not in
So-
our lifetime.
Good morning from Vancouver. Following your plan for 5 years totally rocks. Amazing.
One
Really
of the biggest bubble markets in the world, but a darn beautiful city. I
beautiful,
absolutely
gorgeous.
love
I love
Vancouver.
it.
Yeah.
Wandering Doc. Hi, Jason. Thoughts about syndications? Well, Wandering Doc, there's a great video from last week that Jason did with Bronson Hill and a Creating Wealth podcast episode where they talk about syndications. So check that out.
Yeah. And just Ashley, let me just say something on that.
Mhm.
Just remember with a syndication, look, with any investment where you're having someone manage it, it's never going to be as good a deal as something you do directly because you're going to pay them a big management fee. Also, many of them are crooks. So make sure you're dealing with someone who's not a crook, right? It reminds me of Richard Nixon. I am not a crook. I love that.
Anyone who has to say they're not a crook.
Yeah, there's probably
Anyone who has to preface themselves with the phrase "I'm not a crook" isn't that trustworthy?
Yeah, Tricky Dicky Nixon. He was
Well,
but at the same time, he was a really pretty brilliant man. Okay, but yeah, he was a little shady. Anyway, so just remember when you relinquish control, you now are entering into this environment where someone is going to take a big management fee off the top for managing the deal, and they may not be honest, they may not be competent. So I'm not saying don't do it. It does scale nicely because you can deploy a lot of money more quickly without having to manage it yourself, but you're just never going to get the return probably that you get on your own. Direct ownership. So if you're going to do that, make sure you have a mix in your portfolio of at least have some direct ownership. The richest people are the direct investors. Okay, you never heard of anybody saying they got rich by investing in REITs, real estate investment trusts. Okay, they got rich by owning a bunch of properties themselves. They might have perpetuated wealth that they already earned or made by investing in things like that. But remember, the manager gets paid a big fat fee, and they also get paid that fee mostly without risking any of their own capital. Okay. They get a big fee for managing the deal. And I'd really encourage you to read a great book by Nassim Nassim Nicholas Taleb or Nicholas, I don't know. I could get it wrong. Nassim Taleb. Anyway, he's brilliant author, written many books. The Black Swan, maybe his most famous, but read his book called Skin in the Game. And it's just a takedown of the Wall Street and banking world. And it's really, really good. So Skin in the Game, I think that's the title by Nassim Taleb, must read.
One quick last question. If you haven't hit the like button, please do that. One quick question from Jana. Brother Jason, what will you be covering at George Gammon's Rebel Capitalist in Houston in January?
I haven't decided yet, so I'm going to keep you in suspense on that one. It's a surprise.
No sneak peek. Oh, come on.
Well, there might be, but I got to get closer to it.
All right. Yeah, who knows what could happen between now and then. So.
Yeah, that's a long time. It's a ways away. Well, it's over a month. It's not that far away.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And thank you, Jason, for all that great information, as always.
All right. Yes, we appreciate all of you for joining us. I love some of these comments in there.
I know.
This one's great, Ashley. Biden's going to be on the $1,000 bill.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now that one is because we'll need a $1,000 bill, because the $1,000 bill will, and Obama will be on the 500. The biggest bill now is a $100 bill, but we will need higher denomination bills because they will be worth less and less real value.
$1 trillion Fed coin.
Hey, look at this. The Zimbabwe money, Ashley. I keep this right here on my desk. This is the $100 trillion Zimbabwe bill. Okay. and here's the 20 trillion. One of our listeners sent this to me. So
you're a multi-trillionaire.
Yeah, being a trillionaire ain't what it used to be.
Not in Zimbabwe, anyway.
Soon someone will rip out a money clip out of their pocket with a bunch of $1,000 bills in it, and it'll be worth like $3. You go to let's go to Starbucks. I got a couple of thousands.
Sure.
All right. Thanks, Ashley. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Happy investing.